I'm Rob, the curator of Ward 7. I'm so excited to talk about talking to Oliver Coates, the composer of the amazing new film Pillion. Oliver, thank you so much for your time today.
Great to see you, Robert. Thank you so much.
First of all, congratulations are in order. It's a really beautiful score. It's so lyrically dense and it's so interesting and compelling. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. We had an amazing time working on it. The Pillion score last year was a great process. I love this film.
You know, what I'd like to know straight off the bat is why did you decide that tenderness was the right musical language for this particular story?
The decision comes to you rather than you enact it out. I think me and Harry, I think I read the script and I thought it was very funny, and I came up with a whole bunch of sounds based upon my sort of bodily reaction to that script. And they are in the film in subtle ways. But ultimately, it was a melodic, like you said, lyrical journey to find the right kind of melancholy, the right kind of funny, the right kind of. This film is not actually. I mean, it's. I guess it's marketed as a pretty eye popping or like an extraordinary experience, and it has that. But it really is, like you said, it's a very delicate, subtle film actually about power dynamics in relationships, in all relationships. I think. I mean, I think it's an extreme way of talking about how we all relate. But yeah, the musical sort of hunt was about finding the right kind of emotion that suited Colin, and the melancholy that you feel, you sympathize with him, but also that emotion wasn't too sublime and it wasn't too sort of sacred or overwhelmingly beautiful in a sort of unearthly way, but really grounded in like a kind of like a very radiant, grounded, romantic melancholy.
And I think that lends so much more to the story and to the stakes and to the emotional stakes, I think, and which of course is one of the things that the composer I think does best on any film. So if this film's about intimacy, vulnerability, and power dynamics, as you say, how do you design a sound world that holds all of those tones without tipping the scales into like irony or melodrama?
Well, yes. You just stick at it. I mean, every day there's a sort of resilience to sort of finding the role of the music within the editing process. So while they edited, I would offer up different ways of looking at it. And Harry has an extraordinary ability to know the emotions of his characters from all angles. So what steps outside the emotional frame, what's the right zone, how much. Also, at a certain point, I don't, because you're making a film which is not. There are no cliches and there are no genre references in this film. Over time, the music asserts itself as to its function, so you don't actually know sort of without testing what's the point of music in this film. But actually, Harry eventually did settle very well on like this almost sort of theatrical, dramatic function of the music. There's not a lot of music, is what I'm trying to say. It's not like wall to wall music, but when it comes, it really counts. It gets us in the forest, or it gets us on the road from A to B, or it's a real sense of adventure over here, or over here it's a real radiant sexual awakening. You know, these they had very almost theatrical specific functions. I don't think I've answered your question of how do you not to spill into melodrama. But it is,
Well,
but
yeah,
it's, yeah, there's restraint to it as well.
yeah, I think that's really the bottom line. Is what you're saying. There is a lot of restraint in this score, and you could have gone in so many different ways, as you would on any film. But I really love the choices that you've made in this one. And one of the major choices, of course, if anyone knows your background as a musician, is the cello. And I'm wondering, what do you think makes a cello such a powerful emotional voice for film? What can it express better than other instruments?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I spend my life actually on that fault line. That fault line being it is a very expressive instrument. I mean, it's corporeal. People always say this. It's anthropological. It feels like a body. It has dimensions that remind us of bodies. I'm not really like that. I mean, I've lived with the same instrument since I was 9 years old, and for me, it's a tool. It's a wooden box that has a range of sounds. For me, it's like a workstation. The cello is not a. It's so flexible. In fact, whether I'm doing insects or I'm doing motorbike noises or I'm doing passionate melodies, the cello goes wherever I want it to go. Plus microphones, plus computer. So I use it as a kind of tool to write. In some ways, you often see a composer sitting at the piano and showing their sort of thing. My cello's over there, and it's kind of always hovering.
Wow.
Mind you, the romantic, the emotional romantic side of the cello doesn't come until the end of this film, where we have a denouement, and that's when we really we held back on. I think I have 12 romantic cellos really going for it at this one really great bit, and it hits with a cut, and it's just amazing from Harry to know where to hit there. Until then, the piano does a lot of the work of the laconic humor and the sort of the tender lyricism, and the cello I'd made all these kind of stretchy, leathery kind of cello sounds early on that emulated two things for me: motorbike purring, like the engine of the purring of the engine, or the stretching of leather, the sort of zip, so when I time stretched or played low drones and then I sort of made them a little bit rubbery, that was funny to me, and I thought they were interesting drones, and they are in there at low levels early in the film, sometimes when we're on the road, and later in the film the emotions pour out more readily when it seems like the sentiment, it's time for it to hit.
Yeah. You also brought in another key ingredient, and that is obviously these gorgeous vocal contributions. How do you decide when a score needs voice rather than just another instrument?
Yes, I can't. I'm trying to think now how much voice there was in the temp. There was a bit of voice in the temp, something that was a bit operatic, but we decided we didn't want that. So the temp sort of pointed us in a certain direction, but we had a lot of discussion around voice. And as a result, I have a lot of different voices in the mix. I have ML Buch, who's based in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
She's singing a few sort of lovely hooks, like sort of backing vocal type motifs. I have my assistant Nick, who's a genius. He's not my assistant; he's my friend. He's a jazz composer, guitarist,
Fellow
singer.
Australian, yes.
He can do it all. He's an Australian, Nick Roder. And I have other Glaswegian-based singers covering lots of different bases. And one of the things we hit upon was the digital transposition of a high soprano, dragging the frequencies down about an octave, but almost deliberately using the digital imperfection of that to find a kind of androgyny that's somewhere between sort of fruity male and high soprano, but with just enough of the wobble, just enough of the kind of expression, but brought down into this zone that felt beautiful, but also a bit funny. We were always looking for this fine line between, that moves me, but is it a little bit wry? Is it a little bit funny? And I think we found this kind of thing, and I've sort of loved it ever since. Some people think it's a Mongolian horsehair fiddle, it sounds like it could be an instrument, but in fact it's a voice brought down into this zone, which is a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah, I love that. Oliver, on this channel, when I talk to composers, I like to, if I can, talk about a couple of my favorite tracks. I've done it recently with people like Daniel Lopatin and Alex Summers, and similar genres, I guess, to you, in similar wheelhouse. And on this album, I think the opening track is so good, Sex and Bonfire. It's so mellifluous, melodic. It's actually really uplifting, and it's intimate, and then it's also expansive. And this is just in my layperson's way of trying to explain how I feel about the track. It's really difficult to put into words, actually. Talk me through the opening track, Sex and Bonfire.
Well, I moved it to be track one because I love it so much. It's somewhere in the middle of the film
It's so good. Yeah, exactly.
chronology, but I knew album wise I wanted people to get there. Um, and if we had a day or two, I'd love to go through all the versions. Like there were many
Oh,
versions of that
wow.
track, because Harry came up here to Glasgow and we had pasta and we went through every note and every curve and every rise and fall. It is a sex scene. I've never worked on a sex scene so much to the point where I forget that it's a sex scene. Um, in two parts. There's the sex scene, and then there's this radiant bonfire sequence, like a communal gathering, which really feels like normalizing happy community. And Harry was very keen to make sure that we avoided any bittersweet harmonies, anything that was too Radiohead or too kind of melancholic.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
we kept things. And I was saying, well, I don't want it just to be vanilla, Harry. I don't want it just to be like a soap. I think we had this kind of conversation. I don't want it to be a soap advert. And he said, yes, but keep it like this is not the point for heartbreak or melancholy. So when you're trying to write a good tune, a good tune has a balance between light and shade,
Mhm.
or sort of positivity, negativity. All tunes have rise and fall. So you and dissonant harmony versus resolution. So that was the thing that we worked on many times. And a lot of my early drafts were again too spiritually beautiful, like sort of Lord of the Rings in the forest beautiful. So I could play,
Yeah.
and I like some of those, and I still
Yeah.
love them. But that was sort of like a 4 month process to get to the place where it was beautiful but funny. For example, just a very basic thing would be a grand piano playing this sort of twinkling in motion kind of texture, what sounded right, but it was almost just a tiny bit too earnest. That was the note I got. Like, this is just, it's really nice, but it's just a bit too serious beautiful. So I added a sort of almost like a slightly cheaper electric keyboard onto that, like simultaneous, so it had a tiny bit more chintz in the sound. Like there's a sort of cheapening. Like it goes back to
Yeah.
your question about the cello. Sometimes you're trying to undermine the beauty of the instrument.
Yeah. Wow. I wondered why it was in the beginning of the album. Now it makes sense to me. It's just that that's what you're the composer, and that's what you wanted to put on there at the beginning, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I love it. Um, there's a couple maybe this is cliche, but I love Drive Away. It's beautiful, and then you repeat it on the album, piano only. It's so yearning and contemplative, and then it builds into this luscious string overlay. That is a stunning track as well. What about that one? Talk me through that one.
Um, I don't know. Sometimes I like to try and stumble across music. Like, I think if I sit down each day and try to make good music, I fail. So I often try and make music through inadvertent ways and then often play them backwards and see what I've got. And that tune came out almost from, I'd made a string texture early on in the process, and then I sort of extrapolated it, played it backwards, and I heard a melody in there that was sort of trying to come out. Then I was thinking about, I think Harry had mentioned rom-coms, like almost traditional rom-coms, 90s, Richard Curtis-esque, like almost quite funny that we'd be referencing that. Did he
Mhm.
mention? I can't remember really, to be honest. And I ended up thinking about Thomas Newman in terms of that very warm, like at home in the hearth kind of sound, and it's something I'm
Yeah.
bad at. I'm not a good pianist, and I don't instinctively, I don't quite know what I'm doing with the piano, except I know what I like. So piano I used in many different ways through the film, and I got other people to play the piano. I played this piano myself, and I also programmed sample library piano. So I used all different types of ways to get at the piano. And in this case, it was a slow process of just picking out these notes. And the reason I include the piano only version is it felt like the most domestic, the least dramatic, but sort of I remember I came up with that really early intimacy based upon the feeling, and it took us a while to find out if it was going to be the right fit for the film.
Yeah. You mentioned Harry Lighton's writer-director. This is his feature directorial debut. Such a stunning, I mean, he's done a lot of great short films, but this is such an achievement for him. Firstly, how did you come to connect with him? And secondly, what did you find most valuable about your collaboration with him and his approach as a filmmaker?
Yes, I mean we had had dinner a year and a half before I read the script because he was assisting a director on another show I worked on, and I got to know him in I'm not sure where he was with the script, but he was sort of, he asked me some gentle questions, and I didn't know, but then one day I got sent the script for Pillion, and I actually had his number still, and I dug it out and I just started leaving him awful voice messages, just telling him how much I loved it, because I flew down to London from Glasgow and I read it on the plane, and there was a dynamic situation between do you call them a steward on the plane who gives out
Yeah,
the snacks, and there
yeah,
was
I
a
guess so.
there was a businessman two along from me, and he got himself when you choose the snack, he was quite loud with the way he was asking her what all the snacks were, and she wasn't gonna placate him by talking through all the snacks, and he ended up choosing children's snack by accident, and she sort of moved on, and I was reading this script, and there was just something about all of our relationships when we don't know where we stand. Am I the boss? Are you serving me? I'm paying you. Are we friends?
Yeah,
Are we enemies? Are we
yeah,
going out? All these sort of grey areas. Suddenly, it's like this script was really popping off. It was like, where do I stand in relation to you? Are you my friend? Are we equal? And I love how this film dares to, this script sort of dared to sort of tackle clarity. The word pillion gives clarity to the grey area of all our relationships. So
yeah.
I left messages for Harry just saying this stuff, and then we met in London at the premiere of this other thing, and we just got chatting, and I just yeah, I was all in. I didn't expect to be all in because I didn't know, like, before I read the script, how funny it was. Actually, it reminded me of Chris Morris, like some 90s stuff that was sort of very British and sort of very funny about its attitude towards sex and sort of Britishness. But Harry didn't know that reference, so I sort of didn't mention that anymore, and I slowly learnt his feelings about the bucolic, the English countryside, the rom-com, the extraordinary idea of a postcard of a beautiful forest or English countryside where you reveal something extraordinary and eye-popping that's going on underneath the picture postcard. That was the funny juxtaposition, and
Yeah.
working with him was about learning. It is with every director, really, learning their sensitivities, learning what sounds they can bear against the picture, what takes them out, what sucks them in, and that's just a testing process. And he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
That's really good to hear. Just as a tangential question, 'cause I can't help myself, I have to ask you about your collaboration with Mika Levy on Under the Skin because oof, I'm really obsessed with that score. Your joint work has been described as like blending your trance-influenced cello with her electronic manipulation, and I just would love to know how did that collaboration shape the way you think about film scoring?
I mean, I have to really disclose that's their score, and I was really a session musician and a friend, but
Yeah.
really a session musician in London at that time. And there were a handful of string players, about 9 of us in the room, and I came back to do a bit more. Mika plays a lot on the viola and
Hmm.
electronics, and I came in to replace some of that with the sliding glissandos and harmonics, and I was just there to witness that journey of edit and score. We had it all written
Hmm.
out, but sometimes we went off piste, like we just had the texture, but we watched the film instead of the music with some of the motorbike scenes. Oh, that's funny. That there's a motorbike scene at the start of that film too.
Yeah.
That's funny. And a lot of scrubbing. I remember one sequence where there's a brilliant viola player and me, and we were just asked to go as long as we could, just intense scrubbing for that
Wow.
opening thing to get off. When you score, when you write things out on notation, it's still the best roadmap we have to convey information to a musician. But sometimes it can feel a little bit. You have to meter it out, and you have to write it in a framework. Once you've got the sort of, once you've communicated that aesthetic to the player, it's possible to then say, right, now let's get rid of the score and literally listen and just play and go against the picture and see what we get in a material garnering kind of a way. So you can move between strict like notation and sort of free. So there was a couple of moments like that, and really it's the precision of Mika's score and just doing exactly what Mika wanted, really. That Mika's always been a very precise and on the money kind of composer. So, like, what do I mean? I mean, like, the sounds are sharply imagined and beautiful. And yes, that was sort of amongst my early introduction to being involved in film. Really, I had done a whole bunch of film sessions, but with a friend doing it and going through it. That was my sort of early, sort of eye-opening to the process.
Wow. So that we fast forward to your work on Pillion, and my final question really is, generally speaking, like how did Pillion push you into new territory in your evolution as a composer? What will you look back on and think, yeah, that score really did this for me?
Well, what I want as a composer is to not really exist, in insofar as to dissolve dissolve into a project because of somebody else's ideas. You sort of have a lot of ego and you have a lot of taste, but if your taste can modulate and expand and go to places that you just could have never imagined. So Sex and Bonfire, for example, I just listen to it these days, if I do, and I think, I can't believe that music exists. And it's only because of the vision of a wonderful director. You write music that you think, how did that ever happen? And that's a feeling I love, because that sort of means, as an ego, as a single human being, as a one, I tend to think that we're not that interesting when we're just sort of on our own, being like full of feeling. But when we try and intersect with others and find the stitching with another person over tiny details, something grows out of that. And that really happened here, especially with Harry. The growth, like the germ of an idea grows with his encouragement and with his emotional direction. So I think it's that sense of like, you would have never have thought that music could have come out of you, and it's only because of the project and the team that it comes out, and you just can't believe it, and you're happy to witness it sort of reach the world.
Yeah, and it will be out there forever.
Yeah.
On that note, Oliver, thank you again for your time. This is a really beautiful score. Congratulations again.
Thank you so much, Robert.